This is the Unification of China, Part 2. In Part 2, we're going to look at the first dynasty in China, and it's extremely important for the development and history of China, so please pay close attention. Okay, so in the Unification of China, you have what's known as the Qin Dynasty develops. Now, I know it says Qin, and some people would call it the Qin Dynasty, but the Q is kind of like a ch sound. So it's actually the Qin Dynasty. And Sheng Yang, who kind of starts everything off, he gives land grants to private farmers, and this decreases the large landowners' holdings, and power starts to become more centralized, and you have an improvement in military technology. But he's not the first emperor. The first emperor is this guy, and his name is Qin Huangdi, and he rules from 221 to 210 BCE, and he is considered the first emperor of China. And so China gets its name from this guy. His dynasty doesn't last very long, but it does set dramatic precedences for the rest of Chinese history. The basic rule is centralized bureaucracy, and he starts massive public works programs. So he doesn't quite create the Great Wall of China, but he starts building this wall-ish like structure along the border of China. Okay, and kind of where it's kind of located in the northern part of China, as you guys can see right here, right there. Okay, and this is basically his empire. Now, notice it doesn't include all of China, but it's most of China during this time period. So that's why it's considered the first dynasty. And when Qin comes to power, very quickly he orders the execution of all critics. He doesn't want anybody criticizing his rule, including family members, half-brothers, even his mother, to a certain degree. And he orders the burning of all ideological works. So you have Taoism and Confucianism ideology kind of stamped out during this time period. He actually even orders the execution of 460 scholars by burying them alive. I mean, this guy is ruthless. Okay, and there's a massive cultural losses during this time period, but he cements his rule on China. Okay, so what does Qin centralize during this time period? He standardizes the law, currency, weights and measures, and script. And so during this time period, all those things are centralized. They're all basically the same all throughout the empire. All the laws are the same. The currency amongst all of China is the same. Weights and measures are the same, and even the language there's only one language in China during this time period. So he forces everybody to learn one language, and we don't really think about this nowadays as kind of revolutionary, but during this time period, every little parts of China had its own currency and its all rules. And if you'd go to one part of China, you'd have to exchange money for the other part, and the measures were all different. And so he gets away with all that. He says, you know what? Obviously, this is no way to run an empire, and basically he says this is one law, one currency, weights and measures, and one language. And during this time period, he starts to build a lot of roads and bridges to facilitate trade amongst his empire. What he's most known for, though, is probably his tomb. And estimates are you have about 700,000 workers working on it one time. And basically, when he dies, he is buried in this tomb with a whole bunch of slaves and concubines, and even the craftsmen that built it are sealed in the tomb with him, so nobody can get out or nobody can tell anybody about the tomb. And it pretty much goes undisturbed until about 1974. And in 1974, right outside the tomb complex, people find what's known as the Terracotta Warriors, and so far they've unearthed about 15,000 of these Terracotta Warriors, and they're all individualized. They're all were of different shapes and different colors, and they all are uniquely detailed. And so massive amounts of time and energy went into making his tomb. All right, and here's an example of just some of the Terracotta Warriors that are found outside of his tomb, and we'll talk more about these Terracotta Warriors in class. But it's just amazing that this guy was able to get people to do all this for him. But again, his empire is extremely important because even though it doesn't last very long, it kind of sets the precedent for all the other empires to emulate throughout Chinese history. Okay, so next time we'll talk about part 3, which is the next dynasty after his, which is the Han Dynasty. Thanks for listening.